Hello ladies. The purpose of this video is to inspire you. Every day we get dressed, and every day that I put on something that's just a cut above, I always feel just a little bit better. There are so many great ideas out in the ready-to-wear industry. You should know that once something's released in ready-to-wear, there are no copyrights to protect it, and so it is free game. So because of that, and because of the great ideas I've seen, I've collected them together, and I'm going to show them to you today. Keep in mind that once we make the first pattern, I've heard it said by many of you that the second time we make the pattern, it goes so much faster. So my plan is that these details can be added on to the second time we make the pattern to make it look completely different. So we're going to get started with knit tops. I'm going to go through them, show you the treatment or the finish that's on them, and then make sure you understand how you can do that. We're going to start with these little tops by Armani. They're great. They're not cheap, and the only reason I want to reflect some pricing for you is so you really can recognize how much you can save by implementing these little tops. And because a lot of us have sewn for many, many years, we're hesitant to leave the finishes as we're seeing them currently. We have a tendency to say, oh, we can't do that, we've got to finish it. And raw edges, I'm going to show you many times this morning, are really common and they look great. So in this particular top, the neckline edge is just a raw serged edge. And the same with the sleeve and the same with the hem in both of these cases. So I'm going to just show you a little trick in doing that, and I've cut these pieces for you, and I'm going to give you two examples. The first, I'm going to take a knit, and you can see that that's plenty stretchy, and I'm going to run that through. Now this is actually not a rolled hem. I think I might have said rolled hem on here, but this is actually a narrow overlock. And the difference being, I'll show you here in just a minute. You want to make sure when you're doing that you're not stretching so that you don't get any kind of wave when the neckline's done. In this particular case, we want it to be nice and smooth. So if I just do a single layer, a wide or a narrow overlock will not give me stretch. So the secret here is I'm going to do this on the right side. On the back side of this, I'm actually going to put another layer of the same fabric. It's not going to show, but I'm going to show you the difference that it makes. Again, this is a narrow overlock. It's a 3-thread narrow overlock. Again, don't pull because I want it to lay nice and flat. But I've added in this second layer, and what I'm going to do now is cut out this second layer so nobody will ever know it's there. But when you do the two layers together, you will find that that edge now stretches. Again, notice when I did it just with the layer by itself, it didn't stretch. But when I add the second layer in there and cut it away and you can't see it, it has full stretch and range of motion. And that's what you want. You want it to lay flat, just like these are. There's been another layer added in and then cut away. And so that's the best way to do that. Okay, the other one I just wanted to show you that was very similar to this is actually done 2 layers. This would be a blouse neck edge, similar to this right here. Although this one is actually done with a purchase trim that's just been added on there. But you could make something very similar to that, and I'm going to show you how that's done. I've cut 2 strips in addition to my neck edge. One is wider, this one is 3/4 inch, this is a 1/2 inch. And I've sandwiched them around the right side of the fabric to where I've put the right side against the right side, and then the wider one, I've taken the wrong side and put it against the wrong side. And serged, and again, this is a narrow overlock. I've done all of those together. Prior to doing that, I went ahead and did a rolled edge with a little lettuce. Then pull those together after it's done. And then these can actually be stitched on the sewing machine. And that way, again, if it's all the same color, it actually will hold the ruffles together, and you see the little neck edge that you get, the little treatment, and it's just a great idea. It makes a cute little finish to anything. And again, you can either do the contrasting color or do it all the same, depending on just what look you want. All right, we're going to continue on through these knit tops. This is a little top by Michael Stars. If you're not familiar with that designer, he's out of California. He has sold over 10 million t-shirts in the last few years. This t-shirt is $40. The reason I picked this particular one to show you is this is the old lace we used to stick on our pajamas. I don't know if you remember that. It doesn't even match. It's not even the same color, but he just used thread to tie this in and make it the same color. So something like this I want you to keep in the back of your mind as it liberates us as sewers so that we don't continually have to think we have to get something that matches or we have to use the right thread or any of that. There's such freedom as to what we can use. Anytime we're doing a trim like this, we want to make it a little smaller than our neck edge, usually 3/4. Whatever our neck edge measures, we can take 3/4 of that and use that for the trim. This one is a great little top. It is just cute. You can do this on so many different places that you want to, but it's a little bit done, not deceiving, but it's a little bit different than what it first looked at. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, that's got to be done on the serger. But you actually can't do a circle like this on the serger. So I'm going to just run through and show you how to do this. And you see it's just a series of circles, smaller circles inside, and then of course tacked together. And tacked together within 1/2 inch of each other so that it forms the ruffle all the way around. So I just used a spool of thread, and you can use anything as your circle, and just to where you get 2 different circles that you like the size they are. And I would use not an ink pen, I would actually use a disappearing pen, I know we have them, or just something that won't show, or else do it on the wrong side. You could do that as an option too. I've set my sewing machine on a zigzag stitch. I've adjusted it to where my length is only 2, my width is only 2, and my length is only 0.5. And that way I'm going to get a zigzag edge to be very similar as typically as what is a rolled edge. So I'm going to go ahead. I put on a Teflon foot just because it has a tendency to not hold up my fabric. It'll have a tendency to have it go through. When I'm doing this type of thing, I really can't use a stabilizer. I could use a wash away, but I really don't need one if I use that Teflon foot. And all I'm going to do is keep my ink line right in the middle of my foot so that my circle is turning and my satin stitch is going all the way around my ink, and I can just go all the way around. Once I've created my circle, and I didn't go all the way around, but you can see that then I can just cut right outside and I make my little circle. It's really a fun project, especially for a young sewer to learn how to do, because it gives a very professional look without really a lot of skill level at all. And of course, how many you place or how closely you place is up to you. And it just really a great way to finish off a neckline and really make it look nice and different. As an option, I did this on a knit because I think it'd be fun to have. You can see on a knit how it creates the waffle effect or that wave effect, and I think it'd be fun to have a whole bunch of those. It would give you, again, a little bit different effect, but yet still really nicely to have that little wave going all the way through. So I think it'd work well with the woven or the knit, either one you wanted. On this next top, I wanted to show you that this contrast around a ruffle, this is actually knitted, and so it's actually 2 different threads, but I want you to keep in your mind a serged edge or a stitch on the sewing machine that's in a contrasting color. So that idea I just wanted to make sure you were aware of. It's great again to use contrasting colors and threads. This is a little top. Again, it's just a little V-neck, and yet I really like these little additions. And as you can see, they're just 4 pieces of tie, and those 2 are intertwined and those 2 are intertwined to go to the opposite side. But it really adds to the neckline and really just makes a great little view. These next few tops are all bias binding, and these are knit tops with woven bias trim. And I like that combination because a lot of times we can find great knits, but we can't find a way to finish them off. And in this particular case, that the trim is narrow in most cases. And the thing we have to be careful about when we're sewing these is that the trim is showing on both sides, and it's actually just lapped over the raw edge and stitched in place. So I've got a little piece of bias here, and I'm going to just show you a few secrets to really doing this well. This is just packaged bias, and you could actually make it if you didn't find the colors you want. But keep in mind again, when we go back to this, there's so many colors that are close, and again, this little top was over $300. So you see that it's a yard of fabric and a little bit of trim, and it really, we can save a lot of money making this kind of stuff as opposed to buying, but again, it's the ideas that I think are so valuable. We could make that if it didn't match exactly, but I think again, I want you to not focus so much into finding something that matches exactly. I think we need to be aware that it doesn't need to be so carefully matched. So this is bias tape. I just pressed it in half, and that's really where the key is when you are pressing, you want to be very careful that it is pressed in half, because what I'm going to do as I'm lapping the raw edge of the blouse is I'm not going to be able to see the back side. I always want to sew from the side that's going to show. So I'm just going to lap that over the raw edge. I'm going to change my sewing machine to a straight stitch. And give yourself some length as far as how long your stitch is. I would do it either at 3 or 3.5. Don't go so small that that the stitch has a tendency to stay in the same place. And again, I'm going to use my Teflon foot just because I know it's commonly used on leather, but you'll find that it's so easy and so quick to do. Now I'm using a contrasting thread just because that's what's on the machine, but I want you to keep in mind that I would suggest in most cases that you use a matching thread just because it's going to look really nice. But that bias will wind itself around the neck edge and it'll just lay nice and smooth. But again, I think the key is really in the pressing so that you can see that I've stitched evenly on both sides and I've caught both sides. So press well first beforehand, and you'll see it's used in so many different areas. This particular blouse I wanted you to see just because if there's a place to put a great trim, put it. There's so many beautiful trims out there, whoops, that really works well. Here again is that bias trim that goes around the neck edge. This again can be made, you don't want to get any wider than 1/2 inch, because once you get wider than 1/2 inch, it's not going to curve. It's not going to go around the armholes and around the neckline nicely. Most of them I would stay narrow, 1/4 inch, 3/8, half being the widest. You don't want to go any wider than 1/2 inch. And then the last in our little knit top series, this is a great little neckline that you could easily make. It's just a V-neck. Notice the ribbing, and it wouldn't have to be ribbing. You could do it out of the same exact fabric. It's about 1.5 inches wide, and as you can see, it's just a strip. It's just a strip that goes from front to back, and then of course goes the opposite way, this being serged in not until you start serging this way. And if you peek inside, you can really see that it just comes to a V, which is very easy to serge because you're going one way and another. And again, this could be done on a sewing machine. I'm just showing you serger techniques because most of these are actually done on a serger in the factories, and I just want to show you. Most of them can be adapted though, and you can do them on a sewing machine if that's what's convenient for you. So take the wide, again, it doesn't have to be ribbing. It's just you'd measure the neck edge and make this trim about 3/4 of what the actual neckline measures, and then stretch it, and you'll see that this edge is longer than this edge, works just like regular ribbing, and it pulls into place. All right, so that's been a lot of our fun tops. They're great, they're easy to finish, and they really do make our tops look not homemade and very much designer-like.